episode 566 of 360 Wrestling Fanatic. Going to be talking about tonight's AEW Dynamite with all the fallout from the Revolution pay-per-view, which featured a new set, a new theme song, and a debut. All that and more right here, right now, 360 Wrestling Fanatic. Hello there, Wrestling Fanatics. Welcome to 360 Wrestling Fanatic, episode 566. I am Lance Brock. It's Wednesday. You know what that means. Time to talk about tonight's episode of AEW Dynamite, with all the fallout from this past Sunday night's Revolution pay-per-view. As I said at the top of the podcast in that little preview there, we have a new Dynamite logo, a new entrance, a new theme song, and kind of like a season premiere tonight for AEW Dynamite. Dynamite was live from Atlanta, Georgia at the Gas South Arena. Our commentators for the evening, Tony Schiavone, Excalibur, and Taz. And we kick things off in Atlanta tonight. Tony Schiavone in the ring, and he brings out one of the competitors in the AEW World Championship three-way match at Revolution, Swerve Strickland. And Swerve got a huge pop in Atlanta tonight. This Atlanta crowd love Swerve Strickland, and I've been saying this for a little bit now, but I definitely think that AEW definitely needs to put the world title on Swerve Strickland, make him the face of AEW right now. He is over big time with the fans, and not just because of the Prince Nana dance either. I think having him as the AEW World Champion will be pretty successful for the company. So I think, like the old saying, strike while the iron is hot, I believe it is. I think they should definitely go with Swerve right now, make him a top guy. And he's interrupted by Samoa Joe, the current AEW World Champion. And during Joe's promo, Prince Nana gets the Who's House chant started a little bit. And then they are interrupted by the Undisputed Kingdom, Matt Taven, Mike Bennett, the new AEW International Champion, Roderick Strong, the new number one contender for the AEW World Championship, Wardlow, and Adam Cole. And At this time, we get story time with Adam Cole, baby. And then this leads to a tag team match. The AEW World Champion Samoa Joe teaming with Swerve Strickland to take on Mike Bennett and Matt Taven. Of course, Adam Cole wanted this match to be next week, but then Tony Schiavone got word from Tony Khan in his earpiece that this match was happening right now, and to get a referee out here. And then we see Aubrey Edwards make her way out to the ring to start the match. And we have ourselves a pretty good opening tag team match here. Samoa Joe and Swerve Strickland defeating Mike Bennett and Matt Taven, 6 minutes 52 seconds. Pretty good opener, I thought. And next, the FTW World Championship is on the line as the cold-hearted, handsome devil Hook defends his title against the Machine Brian Cage. But before the match, the remarkable Renee Paquette is backstage with Hook. And Chris Jericho comes up and talks about his history with Taz, talks about how at the ECW arena, his match with Hook's father, Taz, how Taz dropped Jericho on his head, and Jericho shows some respect to Hook here. And just real quick, I just want to say, a recent episode of Talk is Jericho on the Jericho's, they talk about ECW, and they do talk about Jericho's final match in ECW, actually, at the ECW arena. And I know this story has been told before, but one of the fans in attendance at the ECW arena that night was actually none other than Tony Khan. He got his father to take him to Philadelphia for that show at the ECW arena. And Hook gets the win here with the red rum after taking a bump onto a pile of thumbtacks. And chokes out Brian Cage here with a referee's decision, 10 minutes, 9 seconds. But then after the match, the Gates of Agony run in, attack Hook. And then after the match, Chris Jericho makes his way out to make the save for Hook. And I wouldn't be surprised maybe if we see Hook and Jericho team up maybe to take on the Gates of Agony in tag team action soon. Which also, not too long ago, the Gates of Agony were also on Talk is Jericho, which is a pretty good interview. I recommend that in case you haven't heard that episode of Talk is Jericho yet. And Killswitch is in action with the Patriarchy. Adam Copeland, Christian Cage, I got a little ahead of myself there, with Nick Wayne and Mother Wayne. Killswitch defeats Daddy Magic, and then after the match, we see the Rated R superstar Adam Copeland chases Christian Cage out of the arena, and Christian finds a car, throws the guy who is driving the car out, and then drives out of the arena. And Adam Copeland faces the camera and says in 2 weeks in Toronto for Dynamite, he challenges Christian Cage to a third match and for the AEW TNT Championship. But this time it will be an I Quit match. So that will be 2 weeks from tonight. Adam Copeland, Christian Cage for the TNT Championship I Quit match in Toronto. And women's action, we have Chris Statlander taking on Riho, which was a pretty good match. And we have Stokely halfway in Chris Statlander's corner. As of late, the story has been where Stokely has been trying to get Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale to cheat. He gets a chain at one point, but Statlander does not use it, and Riho gets the win, defeating Chris Statlander. And then we see Renee Paquette backstage with Willow Nightingale and says, I believe this Friday night on Rampage, she will be facing Riho, and she mentions how her and Chris Statlander defeated Julia Hart and Sky Blue in a tag match. And she says she wants the TBS championship, and she wants to be the face of TBS. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see Willow Nightingale win that title. Definitely wouldn't mind that. Big fan of Willow Nightingale. Definitely deserving of a championship. And then this could possibly maybe lead to a split between her and Chris Statlander, with Stokely halfway being in the middle. And we have Tony Schiavone in the ring again. And he brings out the AEW EVPs, the Young Bucks, Matthew and Nicholas Jackson. They have some huge announcements. And the first one is about Hangman Adam Page, and says he is suspended indefinitely from the Elite. And Kenny Omega, who is out with an illness right now, he is fired from the Elite. And then we get Eddie Kingston out, and he throws money at him for talking about him, because they said he would be fined. And then it happens. We get the AEW debut of Kazuchika Okada, which actually, he first comes out, looks like he is going to help out Eddie Kingston, but then he hits him with the Rainmaker and sides with the Young Bucks joining the Elite, which I have to admit, I'm kind of surprised that, well, storyline wise anyway, that they would have Okada heel, bringing him in. But it's not too much of a surprise, really, though, that they have him with the Young Bucks very close. with Matthew and Nicholas from their time in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And who knows how long this will last, though. Could just be kind of temporary, just bringing them in, and then eventually maybe they could spin them away from the Elite. But we will just have to wait and see. But definitely excited to see Okada in AEW. There is a lot of dream matches that we could see with Okada here in All Elite Wrestling. And the main event of tonight's Dynamite, we have the aerial assassin Will Ospreay taking on one half of Aussie Open, Kyle Fletcher. And this was a fantastic match here. Not only Will Ospreay having a match of the year candidate with Konosuke Takeshita at Revolution on Sunday, and I don't know if I would say this match was better, but this was definitely a really good match though. And of course, Don Callis was on commentary for this match. Will Ospreay gets the win at 19 minutes, 23 seconds. And then we see the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, come out to make the save here. And really good match. So overall, I'd say that this was a really good episode of Dynamite tonight, coming off of Revolution. And then next week we got the big episode of Dynamite live from Boston at the TD Garden Arena, which of course I'm sure everybody knows that there is another possible debut that has been talked about for a while now, possibly Mercedes Moné showing up, and we could definitely still see that. And then April 21st, the new pay-per-view Dynasty. And next week, also at Big Business, we will see Wardlow get his AEW World Championship match against the Samoan submission machine, Samoa Joe, which I'm sure it'll definitely be a good, hard-hitting match, but I do not expect a title change, and I could see Wardlow being a future AEW World Champion, but I don't see it happening just yet. Like I said, I think if anybody right now needs to be defeating Samoa Joe for the AEW World title, I would definitely put it on Swerve Strickland while he is hot and so over with the fans right now. And that was tonight's Dynamite. Thought it was a really strong episode this week. And before I wrap up this Wednesday night episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic, once again, I know I didn't do an episode last night, but as I mentioned on GMWF this morning, last night's Dark Side of the Ring episode, The Ballad of John Tenta, Earthquake, I thought it was very good, and it was one of the episodes of Dark Side of the Ring that wasn't really that dark. I guess you could say wasn't really that much controversy, but it was definitely interesting. Talked about his sumo career, and of course when he debuted as Earthquake, coming out of the audience as a fan, and one of maybe his most famous angles, his feud with Jake the Snake Roberts in the ring, crushing Damien in the bag. And Jake Roberts was interviewed for the show and talked about how they got a lot of angry letters about that, of people thinking that Damien was actually in the bag, which Damien was not in the bag. Jake Roberts, I've heard this story before as well, has said that they had pantyhose with hamburger meat inside, and that was what was actually in the bag. And they talked to his wife, his two sons, his daughter, and of course Fred Ottman, Tugboat, Typhoon, Jerry Saggs from the Nasty Boys was interviewed, and Haku, Earl Hebner. Also, of course, you had to have Fred Ottman on, and they talked about the gimmicks that he was given when he first went to WCW, Avalanche and Shark, and then eventually they decided to bring him on as John Tenta, but that didn't really last too long. And going back to Fred Ottman, of course, they talked about the Shockmaster, showed the debut on A Flair for the Gold, and apparently Haku has never seen the footage of the debut of the Shockmaster, and they show him, and he couldn't stop laughing, thought it was hilarious, which I'm surprised that there is anybody that hasn't seen the debut of the Shockmaster. And good episode of Dark Side of the Ring. Not sure just yet what next week's episode is going to be. I know there are some pretty good subjects that should be pretty good episodes this new season. And I do hope to talk about it. Maybe go back to doing Tuesday night episodes talking about Dark Side of the Ring and NXT. We'll have to see. And also, the second name for this year's 2024 class of the WWE Hall of Fame has been announced. Bull Nakano going into the Hall of Fame. The first name that has been announced this year is the Advocate, the Wise Man, Paul Heyman. And that is about it for the news for tonight. Thank you everyone for tuning in and listening and downloading this episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic. Remember, in the comment section, leave your thoughts and your opinions on tonight's episode of AEW Dynamite, or if you just want to talk anything pro wrestling. And coming up this weekend, of course, Friday night we have SmackDown and Rampage as usual, but also TNA Sacrifice on TNA Plus. And I will be back tomorrow morning for the Thursday episode of Good Morning Wrestling Fans. So hope you all will be joining me as well. Hope everyone had a great Wednesday today. Hope everyone enjoyed Dynamite. Talk to you tomorrow on GMWF. I am Lance, and I am a wrestling fanatic.